Now you should see my answers, hopefully, not my answers, your answers. So the relevance of skills is very high and high, not astonishing concerning the people are participating, but it came out also from the other discussions. A second one I have for you is what is most important to improve industrial symbiosis? Is it technology, people and skills, infrastructure, collaboration, public support, others? Okay, thank you very much. I will show you the results. And you see that people and skills are in front in this much more, a little bit more collaboration, but this is also related in a way to people, but also public support, infrastructure, technology has to be integrated. There are some of you, about 20% to highlight this. So thanks a lot for this impression. Now it's a time to refer to our blueprint prototype. I will start this session with a short presentation and then hand over to Àngels for the roundtable discussion. Next slide, please. Let us start. So the blueprint framework is oriented at the technological and economic demands and skills requirements. You heard this morning in the breakout sessions, much more in depth. The same for the skills adjustment, job profile assessment, skills classification, VET support. But also it's about strategies and measures. So we are looking for a foresight, observatory, training offers, learning arrangements, etc. And alliances and leadership. On the European level, this is important, but also on the national and regional level. But also we are looking very much forward to the European communities of practice for industrial urban symbiosis, which will start, I think, this summer. And implementation and rollout, we will discuss a little bit about this tomorrow. So concerning the regions, hubs for circularity are important, and national VET systems are also important, and European open coordination is what we aim at. Next slide, please. So you all saw these slides concerning the cross-sectoral generic job profiles. So we are looking at a cross-sectoral approach, which was also mentioned by Aurela in the session before, to connect the different sectors with each other via the skills perspective. Next slide. And we should have also an in-depth look at the different skills classification, which is in the main perspective on technological skills, individual personal skills, regulatory skills, we discussed this, but also business-related skills. So it's a broad range of different skills for management, but also for the operator level. Next slide, please. Also, the VET systems are of interest, how they could support such a development. So we found out that you could read it in the related deliverable. We found out that there are key gaps and barriers because of the not given editors, educators readiness, a pure evidence base, a course structure and tools, the recognition system, a lack of coherent policies, and also insufficient funding tends to be keep the VET systems fragmented and fragmented. That's next slide, please. And we have a very first view on the what we call the training framework. So we will take into account a generic industrial symbiosis training, but these generic training has to be made more in-depth via thematic and advanced training courses, for instance, financial assessment, critical raw materials, etc. We need this, combine this generic training with sector-specific illustrations and specifications. And we want to focus on the job profiles and function and related training courses to them on the managerial, operational level in the production areas, in the functional areas, but also what is called the Industrial Symbiosis Facilitator, which is developed by the InSight project. And I think that's a very new and important job profile relevant for our blueprint as well. Next slide, please. So the blueprint prototype is focusing on a skills intelligence hub for industrial symbiosis, SI hub, and a foresight observatory. But we also want to create or to support and establish a European training community. Our survey you heard about will be a kind of technology and skills radar. We will look for an online training platform. We will look at industry image, recruitment, talent management, division of responsibilities and leadership we are aiming at, and pilot measures and tests should be possible, and recommendations, self-assessment tools, indicators, incentives. These are the things which are on the table in our blueprint prototype we want to implement and test in the next years. Next slide. But this blueprint prototype has to be aligned with your other European activities. And for instance, it's important to connect it with the European communities of practice, regional hubs, with projects, with activities of the European Commission. For instance, the Pact for Skills, you will hear something about it, to be combined with the European tools like ESCO, the skills, competence and occupation database, other stakeholder groups. With the union, IndustriAll is on board. We will hear something from Corinna in a few minutes. And also the sector associations are of importance. Next slide, please. Therefore, we will look in the next 2 years to improve and establish strategies and measures, alliances and leadership, and the implementation and rollout of our skills alliance with the perspective to go on after the project duration. So this is not a project as such, but a start, a finance start for alliance moving on continuously. Next slide, please. And as I always remind, is that we see this as a social innovation process, starting with the challenge, the idea, interventions we already made, implementation, and then in the end, institutionalization and looking for impact. But there will be also always feedback loops where we have to approve or change, let's say, our idea a bit, our interventions and a bit, or the implementation, etc. So this is a common process with a lot of partners, as I said, about 40 partners engaged directly in this skills alliance, and we will take the advantage of the financing in the next 2 years to establish such a continuous skills alliance. So thanks. That's all from my side. and just for a stimulation also concerning the roundtable discussion, which is now moderated by Àngels Orduña. Everyone will know her. She's the executive director of A.Spire, very much engaged in coordinating and bringing the energy intensive industries further since years, and also engaged in our Spire-Sais project and skills alliance, where we are very happy about. Àngels, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Antonius, for this great introduction on the blueprint. So today we have finally 4 speakers. There has been some changes and last-minute changes. So Naomi Timmer was going to join us today in the roundtable, but her son has COVID, so she needed to decline last minute. So, and also because of timing issues, we will do a change in the order of Esther Goodwin presentation. So I will introduce every speaker at a time, yeah, and then we will move to the roundtable. So the first speaker, I don't see her on the screen yet, is Veronica Manfredi. Veronica, could you put your camera on? Perfect. Thank you, Veronica. So Veronica is the director for the Zero Pollution Initiative on DG Environment at the Commission. She has studies in international and EU law in Rome, in Turin, in Kiel, Rouge, in Brussels, and she leads this Europe towards zero pollution and securing an effective management of water initiative, which he will present today. And this initiative is really very important for the green transition, including climate, biodiversity, and circular economy challenges. So Veronica, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Àngels, and good morning to all the organizers. Thank you for having me. Indeed, a couple of words about why I'm invited on top of what you said. I think that you are inviting me because some of the speakers said it's extremely important that what the blueprint is developing will continue to remain and possibly even more pertinent to the overall policy agenda that we are trying to deliver at European Union level. And no, these are very, very intense days, as you know, at United Nations level, for reasons that we would not like to be on our screens every single day and evening. The situation is extremely dramatic. But you will have seen how much the United Nations continue to be also firm on the fact that not only we are united for, you know, security and democratic reasons, but also for green and clean energy transition reasons, maybe more than ever. And actually, Antonio Guterres recently came out with a strong statement about the fact that he believes that the current geopolitical situation should, if anything, just accelerate the delivery on the needed energy transition agenda. So I personally expect an acceleration of what we have to deal in this area, and I think that what you're doing is extremely pertinent. And there, what I feel I must say today is that I hear a lot about circular economy, but you know that we always say that the ecological crises are actually 4 and they're all intertwined. It's about climate crisis, biodiversity crisis, pollution crisis, and resource crisis. And I think that the European Green Deal, we have maybe for the first time put forward really a framework for action that allow us to tackle with all these crises together. And whatever we do at industrial level and in training activities, we'll have to push for this multidisciplinary approach. Indeed, water, for which I am also in charge, on top of having oversight on air pollution, industrial emission controls, is a topic, for example, that showed that if we were to only promote circular approaches, which already would be fantastic, it would mean a lot more water efficiency, would not be enough, because we need to do so much more, for example, to become better protected against excess of water. Think of floods, think of water droughts. So what do we do in order to better manage our resilience in water as such? So my plea today are the following ones. First of all, let's think all the time a bit more holistically, circular, must be clean, must be biodiversity friendly, and must be, I would say, really serving the climate mitigation and adaptation agenda at all times. I heard some interesting stimuli about, is the regulatory framework really fit to promote industrial symbiosis? Well, there you may know that our department is the one in charge with currently revising the rules about the Industrial Emission Directive, which is the regulatory framework that is overseeing the functioning of currently over 52,000 of the largest plants of Europe. But our ambition is actually, amongst others, to expand the scope of functioning of this directive, which overall has proven to be pretty effective. And this is why we are revising this directive precisely in this multidisciplinary spirit, a spirit of looking at how this directive can indeed promote better industrial symbiosis by securing that our CEOs of the sectors that you represent today can actually look at the same time at how to become more energy efficient, more circular economy friendly from the point of view of resource use, indeed reduce the toxicity also of products that we are using in industrial processes, and therefore think a little bit more holistically. Last but in no way least, I'm pleased to stress that both under the circular economy and the Zero Pollution Action Plan that the college adopted back in May, we have by now very well functioning stakeholder platforms that enable for exchanges between industry, civil society, and to together look at how to also make the best use of what you are doing with such an important initiative like the Blueprint model, to stimulate really a different way to train our employees, but also to train people already from academia level. We will see that there is a big strand on training also in the Zero Pollution Action Plan as such. 2022 is the year of youth, and youth is where we have to look at to start with, to secure that this interplay between environmental challenges, health challenges, and may I add, democratic challenges really come together for an inclusive agenda for Europe. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, Veronica. So I must say that in the end, Naomi Timmer is in. So Naomi, I would thank you also to put your camera on during the roundtable. Nevertheless, before going to the roundtable, we will go to a presentation by Esther Goodwin-Brown, who is the leader of the Circular Jobs Initiative at Circle Economy. This initiative aims to ensure the transition to the circular economy is positive for all workers. So she has a background in philanthropy and social policy, and she will introduce this initiative right now. Afterwards, you will be able also to be the first one on the roundtable. Okay, Esther, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'll just share my screen with you all. And I hope you can see my slides now. Yes, so thank you very much for the invitation to present to you all. And I think picking up on what Veronica was saying, just to clarify maybe why I was invited to speak is, so the Circular Jobs Initiative, which I'll tell you a little bit about, is really a program that's trying to link circular economy to these bigger global goals that we're all working towards, and particularly thinking about adaptation and trying to combat inequality and mitigate any trade-offs in labour markets as we see industries and governments shift. So I work for an organisation called Circle Economy, and we're an impact organisation based in Amsterdam. And so we work across different industries and levels of government and business, but we're all focused on trying to support stakeholders to put the circular economy into action, to make it very, very practical for everyone. And perhaps I don't need to explain the motivation of the circular economy so much to this group, but just to say our goal as an organisation and with other organisations like WRI is to try and double global circularity by 2032. So our organisation has determined that currently the globe is only 8.6% circular. So only 8.6% of the resources we use are reused. and we want to double that to 16% by 2032. So a big ambitious goal, but something we're driven to do for many reasons. Seeing that the circular economy is not just about resource efficiency, but there are real opportunities to reduce emissions with more circular practices, obviously reduce resource extraction and slow down global heating, but obviously also that it presents an opportunity to change the way that we live, how we interact with materials and products around us, and also how we work and the skills that we'll all need in our jobs. And so the Circular Jobs Initiative is a program that's focused on employment and education for the circular economy. And we do this by working through 3 focus areas. One is skilling. So what skills do you need to work in the circular economy, to drive circular economy strategies? How might education and curricula need to adapt? The second is decent work. So how can we ensure jobs that are involved in driving circular economy strategies are decent and safe and well paid? And inclusive job opportunities. So how, as jobs shift, and even when new jobs are created, can we make sure that those are available to people currently in the labour market, as well as those distant from the labour market, with an eye on how local transformation towards the circular economy could also impact people working across global supply chains. And so the Circular Jobs Initiative, what do we define as a circular job? And we define this as any occupation that directly involves a strategy of the circular economy or that indirectly supports these activities. So we have direct jobs as core and enabling jobs, which I'll explain a little bit more, and then indirectly circular jobs, which are generated by the use of circular products and services in other sectors across an economy. So this definition is based on the key elements of the circular economy framework, where in the center in light blue, we have the core strategies of the circular economy, which are directly involved in closing material cycles. So in production of renewable energy, in repair, in waste management. So this is where we find core circular jobs. And then on the perimeter in dark blue, we have the enabling strategies of the circular economy. So these are strategies that can be used by governments or businesses to accelerate or upscale those core activities. So in design, in new business models, in developing new digital solutions, all the way down to education and information sharing. And just to give you a couple of examples, so of a core circular job, we can think about the technician that might be working in a company that has a circular business model working on refurbishment, like Philips. Or indeed, we might have a product designer that's helping to design and incentivize take-back schemes for packaging. And so what we're really seeing, and the projections say, is we may see some new jobs, but it's really about a shift in the emphasis of roles and the combinations of skills that people have. So a shift away from material intensive to labor intensive roles, which is demonstrated here in the secondary processes you see at every stage of the hierarchy. And an example here from a project we did in Scotland a couple of years ago, where we know that 60% of oil and gas platforms in the North Sea will be decommissioned in the next 10 years. And we see this as a huge opportunity, as do many Scottish stakeholders, that over 1 million tonnes of materials will become available for reuse, potentially in other industries and sectors or in other areas of energy. There's a skilled workforce that has been involved in developing this infrastructure, maintaining it and handling it, that has specific expertise, which again could be reused and reapplied in different contexts. And if planning happens now and all stakeholders are involved, there's a real opportunity to retain jobs and industry locally by focusing on skills development and really what needs to happen immediately, but also in the next 5 to 10 years to smooth that transition. And this is a nice quote for someone we interviewed who was emphasizing that really skills are transferable across different parts of industries and across sectors. So if you know how to build a certain infrastructure, you know how to dismantle it, you're going to have knowledge about how different materials can be used in other applications. So we really need to leverage the existing skills that we have in sectors and industries. What do we see is limiting action, because as we say, the opportunities seem quite obvious when you write them down, but we know that really this long-term planning isn't always happening. And a couple of reasons we pulled out is that there often seems to be a lack of attention for what this social and economic impact will be and what the potential opportunities and risks are. There may be a lack of knowledge and evidence around the skills that are needed and also the institutional capacity needed to drive these processes and develop these skills. And in some cases, there's a lack of collaboration and really practical guidance for how to translate the opportunities or even the results and insights we get from our interesting studies into practical interventions and policies. And so one of the things we're trying to do at Circular Economy to support the efforts is to translate research and definitions we have into practical tools. So the Circular Jobs Monitor is a digital tool where we display the results of analyzing employment data and input-output data using a methodology that we have co-developed with the United Nations Environment Programme based on the definition of circular jobs I just shared. So this is a little snapshot to show some of the geographic distribution of the data that's on the monitor, and I'll share the link as well to encourage you all to click around it and see the data that we have on here, particularly for a number of cities, but also whole countries and regions in other parts of the world. And just to zoom in and show one snapshot from Europe, and to speak a little bit about the trends that we see, is in Vienna, like lots of other European cities, we find that there are a large proportion of what we call enabling circular jobs. So jobs that are, in particular in Vienna, it's the digital sector and also rental services that are really helping to drive a lot of the circular economy activity in the city. But also we see in the data that there's a real opportunity to scale up the waste management and repair services so that they're serving many more sectors across the city and then generating circular economy activity and employment in that regard. And yes, why do we think this type of data is important and how are we going to empower decision makers? We see it as really important to demonstrate how in reality circular activities, industrial symbiosis translates into jobs. So we know this is important data for lots of decision makers that have many, many priorities on their plate, and employment being normally close to, if not the top of those. And tools like this help us to understand where there's ongoing circular economy activity that could be leveraged, so where there's also potential for scaling up activities. And then based on this, it's also can help us identify where there are existing skills within industries that could be leveraged and upscaled. And with a view to all of this supporting, as I said, more evidence-based interventions when they're used alongside other indicators. And so briefly, just to close with a piece of research that we conducted actually with Antonius, who we've lucky to have on our advisory board for the last 2 years. There's a position paper looking specifically at the skills gap related to the circular economy and the role of different education systems in closing that gap. And really trying to put forward the fact that education can both be a proactive driver of different sustainability strategies and the skills we need from them, and also it has to play a role in adapting to the demand and the response for skills needs that we see. And one thing that we zoomed in on in this paper was the role of vocational education and training, and potentially its overlooked role compared to higher education when it comes to the circular economy up until now. And this was both in terms of meeting demand for higher technical skills, the opportunity to develop modular learning and to upskill people in real time, and allowing employers to mix and match modules to make it most relevant to their context. But also the ability of vocational training to really also touch on some of those focus areas that I indicated is really important earlier. So around decent work and inclusion as well, helping to make sure that workplaces that are engaging industrial symbiosis or circular economy activities are safe, that people have adequate skills to operate in their roles safely, and also to stimulate more entrepreneurship in different contexts and markets. So just a few key takeaways from my side is that we see this transformation within industries as they take up practices like industrial symbiosis and circular economy is going to both shape demand and be dependent on the skills that we have available. So we need to not only wait, but also be proactively pushing for the skills that we see that need to be developed. And to reflect these changes, any changes happening on the industrial level in education and training by collaborating closely with industry and government and education. As I said, we think vocational training has a very important role to play in not just promoting skills, but also decent work and inclusive workplaces. And that we really need to be doing everything we can, like developing blueprints like we're discussing today, to create very practical guidance and tools and steps and plans to engage everyone in developing these long-term plans that will safeguard workers and make sure that we can maximize the opportunities that come from doing business differently and sharing resources. So I'll share the link to our resources page where you can see the research we've shared here, and really looking forward to the discussion this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Esther. I'm not sure you want to add anything else before to open the roundtable, because you have already done the presentation. Do you want to add something very quickly?
Not at the moment.
Okay, then we will move to the next one, to the next speaker in this roundtable. Then I move to Corrina Sierald. She's a senior policy advisor at IndustriAll European Trade Union. She holds a master's degree in European Studies by the University of Leipzig. And in IndustriAll, she coordinates the work on the just transition and on energy and industrial policy. So, Corinna, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Àngels, and thanks also for inviting me to speak at this conference. Yeah, first of all, maybe IndustriAll Europe, some of you might not know it. It's a trade union. We are a trade union federation on European level, representing 7 million workers in manufacturing sectors, in energy and mining sectors as well. So we have 200, we are representing also those 7 million workers are represented in 200 trade unions across Europe, inside the European Union, but also in other European countries like Turkey, Western Balkans, Norway, Switzerland, and so on. So obviously, for us, our main concern in this whole blueprint is how to ensure decent work, as was already also highlighted by Esther, decent work and just transition for workers. You can see this in my background, my screen background. It's the top priority at IndustriAll at the moment, given the speed of the transition that our workers are undergoing at the moment, not only due to the accelerated measures now with Fit for 55 at EU level, but also this has been more accelerated even by the COVID crisis. So actually, we are also, as IndustriAll Europe, we are very much involved in lots of the debates at EU level. We are also involved in the debate about the transition pathway for the energy-intensive industries ecosystem as part of the industrial strategy, and we have been discussing the pathway together within the with employers within the high-level group for the energy-intensive industries coordinated by DG GROW. And there, of course, we are also bringing in our concern about the transition of workers and skills needs in this debate. And for us, what is really important, and I would like to add that to what was said by Esther, what is really important is social dialogue and involvement of workers in the debate and the co-creation of those pathways. So just transition is for us organizing a job-to-job transition for every worker that is concerned in this.
30 seconds, Corinna.
Sorry? Yeah, sorry, I'll speed up. Okay. So for us, job-to-job transition is top priority, and upskilling and also massive investments in vocational education and training will be important ingredients in this. So, and I would like to stress here that we really at EU debate, we have been asking and continue to demand to have a EU legal framework for the anticipation and management of change, which actually recognizes the vital role of collective bargaining in anticipating change and skills needs. And also, this will be important to ensure that vocational education and training providers and public authorities can actually discuss it together with trade unions to anticipate the changes and have also skills forecasting. And what will be also more important is how to attract many new entrants into the skills or skilling programs that have been untapped, like women, for instance. I think this is important if you take into consideration the high skill shortages that industry is already facing today. And what is important for us, and I hope I'm already exceeding the 30 seconds you gave me. What is important also is every worker should have a right to training and the right to lifelong learning. So this is really important for us. There should be a right at all stages of the career to ensure that there's a fair transition for every worker and an employability of this worker. And maybe now I lost a bit my train of thoughts because I'm in time constraint. What is important to mention here, what is important is that not only skill strategies are important, but also the industrial policy must be right, because you can have very good skills strategies, but if you don't have the necessary industrial strategy that creates new jobs and that creates a transition of jobs, then you can have good skills policies, but you won't have jobs. So this is really important, and we also stress there in that context, we need an employment mapping to actually see where jobs will be transformed, where jobs will be lost, where new jobs will appear, and what skills are available, and what skills needs do you have to anticipate. So maybe I stop with that. I'm sorry if I was a bit.
Thank you, Corinna. I would thank the rest of the other two speakers to be brief, and then maybe some things can be said afterwards during the roundtable of questions. So I move to Aurela Shtiza. She's the Director of Industrial Affairs in IMA Europe, mineral sector. She's also the Vice President of A.Spire Board and Sherpa in the European Innovation Partnership in Raw Materials. She holds a PhD in geology, and she, she's an expert. Her curriculum talks for herself, and then she has been introduced in the previous session, so I will give her the word directly. Aurela, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Àngels, for giving me the floor. Has been really an extensive day of exchanges, and in fact, what is extremely important is that for the companies, it is extremely important to have the right people on board in order to make sure that there is the alignment with a just transition process, which was already introduced by Ms. Manfredi. And the idea is that the companies are getting ready, and we are trying to actually inform them on the possibilities that are available with this new skills, with the new skills agenda that has been forwarded by the European Commission. One point of concern is that with regard to our members, we have about 200 operating companies around Europe. There are two different scenarios. So there are the large companies that have the means and the large number of employees, and there are the small and medium-sized companies which have somehow a bit more difficulties to find exactly on which door to knock and what the possibilities are. So I think also in the just transition agenda, as it was already highlighted by Esther as well as Corinna, it's important to make sure that the just transition leaves no one behind, and we make sure that there is a good alignment, and we help all companies independently of size, but we need also to somehow adapt the necessary tools and the training skills in order to make sure that the just transition takes place and everyone moves on the same speed. With this, I'd like to leave the floor, also mindful of time.
Thank you very much, Aurela. I'm pretty sure you will be able to comment further and more during the roundtable sessions. So now I give the floor to Naomi Timmer, the director of Age 20 People, where she has created the European Union Water Programme, a flagship project for the EU water sector. She's active for almost 10 years in the water management sector, and she holds an MA in political science at Leiden University. Naomi, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you for this time and the opportunity to speak. Indeed, I'm the director of H2O People. So we stand for water people, and with water, we mean throughout the whole value chain of water, and hopefully also that's including all the industries we're discussing today, not only as water as an industry, but also within as an important resource for all the other industries and part of industrial symbiosis as well. Today, I want to express, especially in this short amount of time, the importance of the empowerment of the young professionals within the sectors, indeed, to make sure that they are up for all the changes they need to make and need to be able to support. And that's also why, together with Water Europe, also partner in the Spire-Sais project, we created the European Junior Water Programme. And if we can go to the next slide, it gives a bit of visualization as well, what the water sector, or what the EJWP is. It's a 2-year empowerment program for people with 2 to 8 years of working experience. So that part of where you are knowing your job and feeling, okay, so now what's next? How can I still be of added value? I did what I learned for, and now what? How can I still support the development? And if we also listened carefully this morning, we know that this generation and upcoming generation is really much into giving purpose to their jobs as well. And the feeling of still be of added value is of major importance to stay motivated to contribute. And if we listened carefully also to Ms. Manfredi, that holistic approach, supporting the the young generation is of major importance as well. And that's why within the program, we focus not only on the knowledge transfer between the different value chains of water and those nearby, but we also want to make sure that they create the needed network to make those collaboration give purpose to as well. And we need that professional skills and personal skills, because we will need to change a lot. We need to challenge ourselves continuously, and how to do that if with all these challenges and all these pressures, how do we deal with it? Work-life balance, but also agility. How are we dealing with the changing situations in the world and the more complex dealings we have to do with our jobs? And that whole idea is how to combine all these three elements. That is of major importance. And in the next slide, you can see how we work on those skills together with these young professionals in creating a community to inspire each other to take those next steps, and to make sure that we do it together with the organizations they're working in, because we won't stay at our jobs forever. We will need to do it together, because your employee will be the next ones in just a couple of years. We will change our jobs, we will change our organizations. So we need to take up that role all together, to know that everyone is skilled in making those collaborations and actions as well. And in the next slide, you just see a couple of ideas of how to do that. And that's not just by sitting behind the screen and having these conferences, also really important, but also to dive into it together and feel it, how it is to really collaborate when you feel maybe tension on your back and you need to pull, or you need to see it from another perspective. And that's what we try to encourage people to do within the program. And I hope that the blueprint not only will give the opportunity to look at it this way in the water sector, but also to support the industrial symbiosis just across the industries that matters to create a more innovative and future zero polluted world as well. In the next you find the details of contact as well. And I would like to encourage you to take that younger generation serious, because they do have a lot of new ideas, as we also already discussed this morning. They're not that stuck yet in how things should be done, but might have a different approach as well. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Naomi, for this short introduction. Then I would like to move to the questions. And I would like to make the first question to Esther Goodwin, because she has a time issue. So first of all, Esther, I would like to ask you, how can the blueprint support the work you are doing?
Thank you for the question. I think the blueprint is a really helpful framework. As I said, we are always looking for practical tools and guidance that can be used when we're engaging with stakeholders. So anything that includes a roadmap, is calling out specific stakeholders that need to play a role, is incredibly important. But I would love to see that even contextualized down to the national level. So really who on the national level needs to be coordinating with these European bodies and existing platforms to make it happen, to put it into action. And also with the looking at the existing initiatives involved and the idea to develop the data platforms, this is something that we also would value, seeing how it's integrated in existing platforms, how we can all be working together to make these the insights that are collected very accessible and integrated across tools, so that people can easily access them in the places that they're already going to get this kind of data.
Very good. Esther, I'm going to address you another question, just because I know you need to leave sooner. So what do you think is the most, do you think there is something missing in the blueprint for you?
As I said, I think, well, I think it's the next stage. but it's really then contextualizing that on the national level. So we think about the education systems that's going to be very specific to different countries and how what type of education system they have, how industries are engaged. So I think seeing that translated to the national level and even regional in some cases, and then bring in the relevant European platforms and trade unions to really support learning across countries would be a fantastic next step.
Okay, very good. So thank you, Esther. Of course, we are happy to have you in while you can. Then I'm moving to the other speakers in the panel, again with a question: how do you think the blueprint can support your work? What is of interest from the blueprint to your professional background? Anyone has a preference to start? If not, I would invite Aurela from the industrial point of view to comment on this.
Yeah, thank you, Àngels. So I just didn't want to take the floor because I wanted to listen a bit what was going to be said, but I can start. Maybe to start with a statement, I mean, nobody is born with knowledge. We build the knowledge because we have a need for it and because we have an interest to develop a special and a particular quality or a particular professional knowledge. So at the end of the day, the idea is that the jobs, they've also been changing over time. So we do not always have the same set of jobs as our parents have with right now. The job profile is much more loose and flexible compared before you hire an engineer, you have an engineer. Now you have an engineer which has to be having a connection with digitalization, having a connection with understanding policies, how they work, what do they mean in practice, an engineer that is able to see what is the waste, what I can do with it. So is an engineer with plus other qualities. So at the end of the day, the idea of developing this blueprint cross-sectorially, it gives us a helicopter view that different sectors are struggling more or less with the same issues. So how we can link these different issues into an umbrella initiative that can help us to find common solutions. And I don't think we have the luxury of time and financing to develop everything at every single sector. So this kind of blueprint development, it helps us to have a much bigger picture in one shot. And I think this is the added value of this kind of European project, as well as the development of blueprint at this stage.
Thank you very much, Aurela. Anybody wants to follow up on Aurela's comments? Naomi?
Yeah, except or next to, I should say, to the young professional program we have. I also am a working group leader on human capital developments for Water Europe. So combining the knowledge, but also the expertise of all the different water organizations, how to deal with all these challenges as well. And I do hope that we can use the blueprint to inspire all these organizations and partners to learn from and with each other, to use each other's tools to see what's going on, because we have all these different bubbles that we are active in, and we can learn so much from each other. And I hope together with to break through all those different silos. Already in the water sector, we have many different silos and many different systems, but especially if we also look into all the other Spire sectors as well, where water also plays a role, how can we make sense of that? And I think the blueprint can really have that to bring it into scale for everyone to understand how we could better collaborate on that level and that framework.
Very good. Thank you, Naomi. Corinna, Veronica, do you want to add something on this?
Just a couple of reflections from my side, after which I will also have to leave you, unfortunately. First of all, very interesting discussion. I come out of it with the feeling that yes, the blueprint can help us all a lot if it truly embraces in this very cross-cutting manner the overall green transition and I would say digital transformation needs, which are multiple, but I think you see a lot of policy activities carried out by the European Commission at this stage, and all in all very much embraced by our member states, I must say, which is encouraging in a manner that you really see how all the ingredients are really contributing to this agenda. And I always like to repeat one bottom line. With €1 as an industrial operator, I would like to achieve multiple goals. And today I can, if I invest in the right industrial processes. And here is where also I think we as regulator can give a contribution. I mentioned already the ongoing review of the Industrial Emission Directive. You know that one of the key things that this directive does is to point the industrial operators to the best available technologies. And essentially the key bottom line will be to try and point the industries to the best available technologies that match and square as many points as possible, both from a resource efficiency perspective, including of course water efficiency, which is very dear to our hearts, from a pollution reduction, toxicity reduction perspective, in terms of enhancing the overall resilience of that specific industrial sector and facilitating waste recycling in a more industrial symbiotic manner as well. But as you said yourself, I think, Mrs. Shtiza, on top of what the law can say, then it's up also to the industrial operators to go a little bit beyond. And this is precisely where this engineer with all the many plus comes in. Someone that understands the opportunity and links. And this is where all the blueprint work in terms of better connecting what we want to achieve, what is happening already today in the curricula of, already starting from schools. That's where I will really start with primary schools, and then university level can bring the division better together. And why do we do it? We do it for our planet, we do it for ourselves, first of all, and we do it because we want a fairer and more inclusive social system. So maybe one very other concrete ideas I would have for the blueprint, think of how to help further the industries to connect with the educational centers. If it's possible to favor, I remember already back many years ago, there was much more this concept of the incubators, so industry collaborating with universities. We see it in some member states, but if the blueprint could become a flagship tool to facilitate this connection, I think it would already, kind of open up these two worlds, the training and the real needs of the industry of the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Veronica. I think you've answered also the question on what is missing in the blueprint. So just one more final question. I will take one or two answers from you before we move to the session to the questions from the audience, which is what are these issues in your professional background that could serve the blueprint, so that the partners of Spire-Sais can say, hey, this is what we need to also consider. Naomi?
Well, yeah. As a non-engineer in the water sector, I already bring in probably a couple of different backgrounds in also creating awareness on stakeholders and the ability to look at the complexity of systems and a system change, and that we can calculate and innovate technically a lot, but as long as we as people cannot comprehend or cannot deal with those changes or don't agree or don't want to get to it, we're not getting there. So I think having attention within the blueprint also for that human perspective, can we comprehend or can we understand that we will be drinking wastewater in a while? Can we really understand how we will be using waste in a couple of times to really close that system? Will we accept that as humans and those technical, but also in the workforce as well? Do we understand the differences and the challenges that it brings on a behavioral challenge as well? Yeah, I think that's from my perspective, since I'm more a behavioral scientist in background, that would be really my input as well. And that creates collaboration and understanding. And that's also why we train people in intercultural communication. That's why we train people in complexity issues and how to deal with it. And yeah, I would love to bring that in as well.
Thank you very much, Naomi. So I think we have an issue with time. We started later, but I see there are several questions in the chat. So I would give the word to our the Spire-Sais team. I'm not sure who is going to take the word, Agnese or Evelina. Yeah. Agnese, okay.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
could you
me.
say which are the questions of the chat that you could raise? Maybe a couple of them because of time.
Yeah, so I will try to mix two from Raquel into one to merge them. So the first one would what would you say would be the first professional profiles to adapt? As an example, and she's mentioning engineer. So she's asking if this should be one of the profile that they should be looking into first. So it could be engineer, for example, or operator. And this is referring to the reskilling or upskilling schemes.
Okay. Aurela, I see you would like to answer this question.
Yeah, sure. I think more and more when I hear from our companies hiring people, when they get young or junior profiles that would like to join the companies, they are asked questions which 10 years ago it was not the case. So we don't have only climate change discussions in the street by the young generations, but they're coming in the hiring rooms. They are putting the companies, asking the companies, what are you going to do about this issue? How you are tackling right now this issue? How will you tackle it in the future? So there is a certain young generation dynamic that is making the companies to think in a different light on issues that before were engineering relating. Right now, there are engineering issues linked with societal pressure and societal needs. So I think there is a change into the hiring process. And going back to the question asked by Ignacio, I would say that a young profile should be open-minded. So coming with an engineering degree, I'm taking engineering because I'm an engineer, but please do not take it personal. I'm not excluding anyone. An engineer or whatever the profile is should come with an open-minded. Coming with an X profile does not mean you will be into that box profile. You should be open-minded to learn. You should be open-minded to get to evolve in your job profile, and you should be open-minded to be relocated national-wise or in another region outside of European Union and bring this new way of thinking, or also from outside of Europe and bring it into a European thinking context. So the idea is having a degree does not make you a specialist in that degree, but a degree is only the starting point of something. And the something is up to every single employee to develop what will be that new something and that new specific you are going to bring on board into X or Y company. So for me, it's important to be open-minded and to be eager to evolve in whatever job you get the possibility to do, and whatever job you get the possibility to grow professionally as well as personally.
Thank you, Aurela. Corinna, we see that you are back. Not sure if you want to make any comments now.
Yeah, apologies. I couldn't do anything anymore, not even close Zoom, so I had to reboot. No, maybe just a few words why the blueprint is interesting for us, and why maybe our perspective is interesting for the blueprint is, of course, I mean, the workers are very close to the work they are performing, and also to the changing job profiles. So they have a first great insight into what is actually happening on the ground. And that's why I think it is really beneficial to include workers in the planning and in the forecasting. It's workers can be also an inherent force source of innovation in a sector, and I think therefore. Again, planning with trade unions and workers' representatives is really of utmost importance. I have highlighted the importance of social dialogue. We've been engaging with our social partners at EU level into skills forecasting projects. We've been also engaging in skills capacity building for national social partners to involve with industry and authorities into foresight exercises. And this is, as I stressed, really a priority for us. Next, of course, to decent work and decent jobs. And that there again, I would also come back to the point I made on collective bargaining. We have good collective bargaining agreements in companies. In some companies already today that are anticipating skills needs with changing businesses and changing technologies, where the trade unions and companies have negotiated first of all the maintenance of jobs, which is of course crucial, but also how to approach the reskilling. And also offering training and education to young people coming in the sector. And we think these negotiated solutions are really important also to take into account in this, that there's really a role for social partners to shape and manage the transition of workers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So Àngels, is there any other question from the audience that we could take?
So there was the other one from Ignacio. I feel like Aurela already addressed the question a bit, but I don't know if Naomi wants to answer on in some aspect. He pointed out the societal aspect instead of just focusing on higher education and that system, like societal learning, so considering to broaden the perspective to citizens and young people. Maybe Naomi can want to add something on this, because I know the background is there. And then I think we need to stop after Naomi.
Perfect.
Okay? Thank you very much.
Naomi?
Yeah, thank you on this. And that also has to do, maybe if we look into societal learning, what might be an interesting topic is if we talk into citizen science or to teach citizens, you get into a non-formal and non-formal education and educating by citizens by citizens. But that also starts probably from people to take people that have the jobs serious with their personal stories, so that they can learn how to tell their stories to their neighbors and to their children. And to so if we want, then we also should have a better understanding of the non-formal training, and maybe even using what we try now within the water sector, also the volunteers that are working in forests or on making playgrounds greener, or so that we are broadening our perspectives, who our stakeholders are, and how to train them, not only from a vet system, but even from, also for a non-formal, how do we reach those groups one by one, probably by storytelling. And that is something we need to learn, and we can also encourage all our workers to do, because we do such an interesting things all around, and we are our biggest ambassadors. So if we can train those, that would be perfect.
Obrigada.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we don't have more time for more contributions, but thank you to all the speakers. Thank you also, Àngels. And as a very quick and very broad summary, so the green transition involves a skills shift for workers and roles, also influenced by the COVID crisis, and we need new tools to bridge the skills gap and reach the just transition. Very broad, but I think it's a good summary. Antonius, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, Àngels. That's a very good summary, and I saw some partners in the chat applauding a lot about these final statements. So some new words appear: societal learning and the young generation dynamics. They will push us forward, hopefully. And yes, and it became very clear that industry is a part of the society, and it's not only technological innovation processes, it's also social or societal innovation which is needed, and therefore collaboration is key, and this was mentioned very often.